Over to you, Ros.
Thank you, Neil, and welcome to all of you to the second of COMMEET's webinar series, which focuses on community development and empowerment. My name is Ros Wade. I know quite a lot of you already, but for those who don't know me, I'm a fellow of COMMEET and the chair of London Regional Centre of Expertise in Education for Sustainable Development, based at London South Bank University. It's a great privilege, again, to moderate this webinar, which promotes the empowerment of women and the well-being of vulnerable children, a crucial issue for the whole of humanity, and also for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is a framework for all the work that COMMEET does. So for the future of our world, our planet and our environment and nature, this is an area that is really needing to be focused on. We are extremely lucky today to have a very, very distinguished and experienced panel of speakers to explore the challenges and achievements in this area. There will be an opportunity, as Neil said, to have questions and comments at the end of the panel session. So please put your questions and comments in the chat as we go along, and I'll pick them up at the end of the session. I'd like to extend a particular thank you to Edith Cooper, who is leading on COMMEET's toolkit development in this area, and who's brought together this impressive group to share with us their thoughts and their wisdom. And I'd just like to ask them in a minute to introduce themselves. This is a very short introduction, 2 minutes each, our speakers and panelists, just to say a little bit about themselves and to say why they are passionate about this issue. So over to you, Edith, if you wouldn't mind starting off the introductions. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow. I thought I was going to go last. Okay. So, excuse me. My name is Edith Okupa. I am here in the US, actually in Colorado, Denver, Colorado. I am the executive director of a nonprofit organization called Restoration Project International. And we work with survivors of human trafficking and domestic abuse. Recently, we included immigrants and refugees and asylees because we figured out that these are the population that may not, talk about their abuse. I am passionate about working with women because I have seen that women are a group of people that have been historically marginalized, and it cuts across nations. It's a global issue, and I believe it's one of the issues that is dear to the heart of COMMEET, and I'm honored to be the leader of the Women and Children Toolkit, and I will leave it at that.
Thank you
So
very
it's
much,
nice to
Edith.
meet everybody.
We'll come back to you in a bit anyway for a longer contribution, but a quick introduction from you, Rita, now, if that's all right. Rita Smith. Rita Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Roz. Rita Smith. I have been doing domestic violence and sexual assault work in the United States since 1981, so over 40 years. Was director for about 20 plus of those years as at the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I am currently a private consultant, and I have several contracts. One is as a senior advisor to the National Football League on their domestic violence and sexual assault work, vice president of external relations for domesticshelters.org, an online resource for victims and advocates of domestic violence. And also am working with eBodyguard on a new safety app technology for victims. So that's my my life, and why I committed to this is simply because I know that when women and children are safe and do well in a community, the community and the world does better. So it's in all our best interests to reduce the violence and to help people achieve some status of equality and safety.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rita. Pass on now to Uzo Nduka, please. Uzo.
Thank you. My name is Uzoma Nduka. I have diverse background, ranging from linguistics to international relations, and my newfound love is in public health. I'm an epidemiologist. I'm the the executive editor of and producer of a podcast called Morbidity and Mortality Podcast. And also I'm the founder of a global telehealth and medical records app called My HS Care. Briefly, why I'm passionate about this toolkit that we are going to roll out pretty soon is because I came out from a woman's womb, and you know, apart from that, I come from a community or a country where women have been marginalized for quite a long time. So I think this toolkit has brought out the best in me to showcase how much I love the things that women do in our communities.
Thank you very much, Uzo. Very eloquent. And now Grace Moser. Hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. My name is Grace Mose Okongo. I am calling you from Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya. I am a founder of Hope Foundation for African Women, which is a charitable organization working with women in community. I also do lecturing at the University of Kenyatta here in Nairobi in the Department of Sociology and Gender Studies. I am passionate about this issue, having worked and seen how women all over, even in Western societies, are marginalized. I saw, having worked in the United States, I worked with New York Coalition Against Domestic Violence, worked with family planning advocates. I have been speaking about this issue. My passion comes from a woman who has survived violence, mainly the female genital mutilation, and I see violence every day in my rural community. And so after taking my education in the United States, I came back to my country to do grassroots movement to end FGM and to also work to empower them economically, because it's one way in which they can come out of violence. So I think that's enough for now. Until later. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great summary, Grace. Thank you very much indeed. Abaru, would you like to just have a brief introduction?
Yes, I'll do that. Thank you, everyone. It is a beautiful evening here with the rain, and you may excuse me of my background because it's a little bit noisy. I work with Y Connect. I've been working with the community for the past 6 years. I am so passionate about my working with the community because of many reasons, but just to mention a few, women are suffering, women are violated, men have taken power over women, leaving them to suffer, leaving them not to have access to human rights. They are denied their rights every time. So I basically believe that this toolkit will work better. This toolkit can enable us to do better work and work with the community to address these issues. And honestly, this toolkit will sell a lot because of the reasons I have mentioned. If you take the community where I've come from, honestly, I am from a family where my father married many wives. And if you see these women, honestly, they are suffering. He cannot provide for them all. They are suffering. But I believe that if we put this into implementation, it will work better.
Thank you very much, Abaru. Thank you. Very, very eloquent again. And last but not least, Alan Nansubaga. We can't see you, Alan, but I see you're there. Are you able to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, thank you very much, Rose. My name is Aden Nansoboga. I'm from Uganda. And I'm the coordinator of House of Esther, a women program that started basically because of what we are talking about here, women marginalization, and how we can come up with solutions to overcome all this. I'm very privileged and honored to be on this platform. And I believe as we go on, in our discussions, we shall find as many solutions to the problems that affect the women in our communities. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, all of you, for those brilliant summaries. And I think this underlines the huge importance of this issue and the need for a sort of common endeavour. Men and women both need to be involved in tackling these issues. And it's really, really good to see quite a lot of men here with us, supporting us, allies in this work. So thank you. I'd like to now ask Jos Hermans, who's the director of COMMEET, just to share with us some of the overview really of COMMEET, its values and its endeavours, just to give you a framework to seeing how the work of COMMEET is progressing. Thank you, Jos. Over to you.
Okay, very short as well, within 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you in the first place for everybody who has joined us today. I'm honored with your participation. Remember, we at COMMEET, we are an international organization of volunteers whose mission it is to stimulate communities across the world to take the responsibility for their future in their own hands. We think that in this globalized world, there is a need to counterbalance the power of the decision-making processes and give people in communities more possibilities to bring in their own vision for their own future. We do so with support of many international organizations who find it very interesting to learn from our experiences, because this is a first or one of the first bottom-up approaches of the SDGs wherever. At least we want to try to stimulate all those people who give their best to do so. Well, with the toolkits that our fellows produce are the core of our work. Many communities are eager to develop themselves, but they lack the knowledge or the experience how to organize it. And with the broad range of toolkits, we want to help them. A toolkit empowers a community to set the first and most important steps to tackle a commonly felt challenge in good harmony. That last point is very important to us. We are no revolutionaries. We want to do it from people themselves in good harmony with their neighbors. Well, and after having worked through the toolkits successfully, people will always be referred to international specialist organizations to help them further in their development. And with this webinar on the position of women and vulnerable children, you are introduced to an issue that many communities are facing. Before long, the COMMEET toolkit on this issue will be available, and I wish you good luck. Hope you will learn from this webinar as I will, and wish you all the best for the rest of this hour and the days after. Bye.
Thank you very much, Jos, and I think you're right. This is very much an issue that touches everyone in whatever country, whatever context, whatever class, whatever wealth dimension, and it's clearly a global issue, as Edith has said. So I'd like to, without more ado, introduce Edith and ask her to talk us through an overview of where this issue is situated and how you see it. Thank you very much, Edith.
Thank you, Ross, for giving me this opportunity to talk about the issue again. I like to state that, you know, the issue of women has been, I mean, there's a historical dimension to it. It's been long coming, right? It's an issue that affects the whole world. Women, like one of the speakers had told us, participate in governance, should participate in governance. Women should participate in the economy, in growing the economy of a nation. This toolkit is going to give us a great and an open perspective about the misconceptions that, you know, that is out there about women, the misconception that women are meant to be housekeepers. They are created to be mothers, just mothers, and that's it, just to, they are created to take care of their families. Women don't have to participate in government. Certain roles that have been left as the exclusive reserves of men are some of the highlights that we'll find in our toolkit. We are also in this toolkit going to try to change that perception that some women have about themselves. There are some communities, there are some localities where the women have been made to believe that they have to be at the background. They have to be mothers, and that's their role. They have to be in the kitchen. They have to be homemakers. They don't have to speak about their health. They don't have to speak about the health of their family. They don't need to contribute to the economy of their community, let alone, their nation. They don't have to have this much education. There are some communities as we speak that still stifle educational progress of girls. They believe that girls should not exceed certain educational level because after all, they are going to be wives, right? They are going to end up in the kitchen. So whatever, knowledge they get, is going to end up in the kitchen. So why waste that money? So in these communities, the male children, are encouraged to go to school. They are encouraged, to aspire high. They are encouraged to participate in governance. But whereas the girls in this community are not encouraged to do that. Same way, women don't have agency over their health in some communities. They have to go through their husbands, some have to go through their parents. So these are some of the issues that will be addressed in the toolkits. So our toolkits, excuse me, excuse me. Before I hand over to one of our members, I'm just going to give you an overview of what you guys should be expecting in our toolkit. So our toolkit is going to be talking about the core issues that affect women and children in communities. It's going to talk about how to create a community that listens to women. Our toolkit will also give the community members, community leaders, tools on how to establish boundaries and limitations when they come together to discuss issues, particularly those issues that pertain to women. Our toolkit is also going to talk about how the mode of communication, how should communities communicate, their issues within the community so that everybody participates. So the stakeholder communities, when I say stakeholder communities, I mean government, the local leaders, the women and children are represented. Because how do you solve a problem? How do you solve my problem if I do not contribute to the solution? Right? So these are some of the things that the toolkit will talk about. We'll talk about establishing their vision. Our toolkit will talk about how to relay the findings of the toolkit to the community and to the world. Our toolkit is also going to talk about identifying good practices, and we are bringing out some role models that some communities can, can they hear their stories and try to imbibe some of their methods, how they got to where they are. Our toolkit is also going to recommend action plan. And remember, our toolkits are there. What I'm talking about, I've been talking about so far, are all recommendations. So we are not forcing findings on any community. We are saying, hey, this is a roadmap that you can use to solve your problem, right? So, and then lastly, our toolkit would leave the community with kind of like a 3-year strategic plan. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Uzon Duka. He's going to tell us the what, the why, and the how of our toolkit. Dr. Uzo.
Thank you, Edith. Speaking to why, it is worthy of note to say that the role of women in social, cultural, political and religious affairs all over the world cannot be overemphasized. We all know that women are wives, mothers, caregivers, organizers, helpers, CEOs, and all whatnot in our society today. And their immense contributions to societal growth have not been truly attributed to them or even spotlighted as a result of what we have come to know as gender inequality and other stifling or stringent traditional norms. So realizing that an empowered woman is an asset, not just to the community she finds herself, but to the society at large. So we decided to explore or develop some kind of guides, for communities who want, their women to be exceptionally productive, optimally inspired, and who wants their women to be continuously motivated. So to the what of our toolkit, just like Horst Jimenez said, our toolkit is not a revolutionary type of food toolkit. What we have attempted to do is to use, we use a bottom-up approach to showcase how communities can promote the empowerment of women and vulnerable children. We determined after vigorous and several back and forth among group members that to empower women in any given community, some things have to be addressed to bridge the gender divide. Some of the things we looked at include women's and children, vulnerable children's access to health and education. We also considered variables like women, including women in policy planning, deliberations, and decision making. And finally to our how, this toolkit was put together by individuals from different time zones, locations, and languages. It was very challenging to get everyone for meetings at the same time, but the sacrifice and discipline and even dedication were key to our success. So we set out our goals, we discussed scope of work, we assigned tasks and roles. We also agreed on the best possible approach to the framework of this toolkit. And we are glad to say that our goal is in sync with COMMEET's goal of providing ready resources for communities to build capacity for sustainable development. Today, we are happy to have come up with this body of work. Thank you for the time given me to present the why, what, and how of our toolkit.
Thank you both of you very much. That was a really great overview. And just to let the audience know that when the toolkit is finished, there will be a formal launch and it will be available free on the COMMEET website. So you can watch this space. There will be further news about that in the coming weeks. So thank you both very much for that overview. And I'd like to now invite Rita to talk a bit about individual needs and what are the key issues that need to be addressed in this area. From her vast experience, it'd be really helpful to have some examples. So thank you, Rita.
Oh, you're welcome, Roz. So I think that having done this work for a really long time, it was taught to me early by survivors. And I have never disagreed with them that the only way we can effectively end violence against women and girls is if women and girls who have experienced this issue are sitting at the table helping us develop policies. The people who are impacted by the issues that we try to improve are critical to help us think about real and long-term effective strategies to improve our response. So sometimes our initial response is, you've got to get away, you've got to leave, I'm going to help you get all your stuff, let's get out of here. And that's not always the best strategy at that moment in time for someone who's experiencing abuse. Listening to whoever is in need of our services, and then working within our communities on all the different places that they may touch to try to get help and engage and stay free of the violence. So working within law enforcement community to help them better understand why someone might not leave the first time they call the police or call law enforcement or report to someone. Working with our faith communities so that they understand completely that a person's right to be safe and feel control over their own body is one of those God-given rights. If you're gonna look at the faith community leadership, that someone has a right to be safe in their own home and not violated in any way. Working with businesses so that they understand that sometimes victims of domestic violence or sexual assault may need to leave work for some reason, for healthcare or to talk to law enforcement or to go to court to testify, and that they shouldn't be penalized for that process. Working with politicians or legislators to help develop different laws, different responses to these issues, so that we have a full community support system that understands the impact and the trauma and what that cost all of us. It's not just this particular individual that's impacted by the violence. We all, there are ripple effects from that violence all over the place, whether it spills out onto the streets in terms of gang violence or children grow up to continue that cycle and abuse people in their future. We need to look at it not as an individual issue, but as a community issue. And how do we reduce violence in our communities together and in a way that helps to empower people to make choices for their own safety?
Thank you very much, Rita. That was very powerful and very pertinent, and something I think we're all aware of, although often these incidents occur behind, well, usually behind closed doors, and it's sometimes easy to not know about them or ignore them, but they are a key responsibility for all of us in all communities to be aware and to try and address them. So thank you very much for that. And I'd also now like to ask Grace to share with us her examples of beneficiaries from the work she's been doing, and to give an example of the empowerment of women and children that she could share with us. So Grace, would that be okay with you?
Yes, that will be okay. I hope later I can have a few minutes to share some slides to show those examples. But I wanted to start by telling you that my work started in around 2013. That's when I came back to Kenya from US. And I had been wondering why there is such a high level of gender-based violence in our community. I come from Kisii community, which is one of the highest polygamous community that I know of. And violence is very high. There is rampant female genital mutilation. And as you know, female genital mutilation and gender-based violence actually goes hand in hand, because through female genital mutilation, a woman is socialized to be submissive. And I use the word submissive in quotes, because what they call submissive is more or less something we call intimidation. She's so intimidated that she cannot even speak up. So when I came to US, my goal was to study gender studies, because at that time we didn't have any of that course in our country. But I wanted to seek for answers. And I used the methodology of popular education to know how I can go about engaging communities to end FGM and to end to prevent gender-based violence, or at least reduce it. And when I did that study, I had to follow to South America, Chile, with an organization called APES Foundation, which I saw how it was implementing that methodology. And it is at that time I saw it works. And I came back to Kenya. I got the community women together. These women actually came to me because all of them were coming to find money. Since they had known I have come from US, they just expected me to have money. But I said, let's get ourselves together. And as we began talking about our challenges with gender-based violence and our challenges with economic issues, we started with making bricks, many bricks, and selling them, coming up with so many projects. And I started endorsing women to Kivasip, which you know, it's an organization in the US where women were getting those loans without interest. And they started doing so much work. And now for me to start combating FGM and gender-based violence, we were doing our own economic activities, but at the same time, we were learning our rights. We were learning on how to empower ourselves. We were learning on how we become advocates, both for ourselves and for the community. And I realized that from what I learned in South America, I learned that we have to engage the whole communities, beginning with men. One of the things that usually we make mistakes when we leave men out and then we think we can end violence. No, we engage men. We start by having very fun kind of trainings, which is enjoyable. We show them through exercises, the male privilege. We bring speakers and survivors to speak about violence. We also engage them to start doing the work. And we have seen a lot of progress when we engage men. We engage women to be self-advocates for themselves. We engage them to know that they have to empower themselves if they have to say no to any kind of violence. And we have so many testimonies of what has happened in so many of those women's lives. We engage with the children, because if we leave the children out, then we are not rooting out the problem. So we go to schools, we go to the religious centers, we go to the entire community, to the markets, and we do road shows. We engage with the police. Why? Because we realize that when the police are not gender sensitive, they cannot help women. A woman comes to get help and she's told, go home and respect your husband. So we had to have an agenda to train the police in the neighborhood where we were doing our work. We work with the chiefs and sub-chiefs and the government officials like the county women representatives so that they can take our agenda forward to the policy level. So we are not leaving anybody out. We just work with everybody and we use the methodology of critical thinking. You know, Paulo Freire's methodology is popular education, critical, where people think of what is causing this? Why is it happening? How is it affecting us as a community? And what can we do together as a community to end this practice or to end gender-based violence? And it is because of that that we have seen many people coming together, men beginning to be champions, youth beginning to be ambassadors to end FGM and to end gender-based violence, and we have seen a lot of progress. So later on, when you have a few minutes for me, I can walk you through the slides so that you see the kind of beneficiaries I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. And you've really identified the importance of a kind of multi-level approach, haven't you? So from not just the grassroots empowerment, but the need to sort of educate and share with those in power, namely police and governance and male sort of key stakeholders and so on, to be part of the whole solution, really. And it's also very, very interesting. You've made a very good example here of the importance of sort of interglobal learning. And this is what we're trying to do through the toolkits. We have, you know, through an international group of people working together, learning from each other in different places. And you've given a very good example of learning from Paulo Freire in Brazil and the South American example and taking that to
actually to Ross, what we did in that aspect of global learning, apart from what I learned in the US, I had to come back to the community and pick 6 women who are me back to South America to learn the methodology. And then when we started to implement, because I realized even if I know the methodology, I can't be able to implement by myself. So it was very key for women in the village to be part of the process and to learn the methods themselves. It is so empowering when they realize, some of them were shocked. They have never left the village and all of a sudden, here they are in the airplane to go to America to learn. You can't imagine what that does to a person.
I'm sure.
Changed everything. And when we came, we trained 30 more women, 10 men, and we continued like that. Now we have a cloud of people who are leading the movement to end gender-based violence and FGM. Thank you.
That's great, and that's really a great example. And I think we endorse that example because this is how we're trying to work in COMMEET as well, in this way of sharing globally our common endeavours and common issues, and share our knowledge as well and experience. So just to sum up this session before we go on to Q&A, and maybe if we have time we'll look at your slides, Grace. That would be great if we have time. I'd like to ask Alan to just talk about some of the key challenges of empowering women that she's identified. Are you there, Alan?
Yes, and I am. Thank you very much, Ross. Well, my name is Alan once again. I come from Uganda and I represent the women of House of Esther in Arut village, Paicho sub-county, Gulu district. We've talked, like the previous speakers have spoken, there are very many challenges that hinder, that really come between the development and empowerment of women. And some of which we've already spoken about, or the previous speakers have already spoken about, but I'll speak about a few. There's that underrepresentation of women, and that underrepresentation of women hinders them to access almost the very crucial, important aspects of life. For example, financial exclusion. One speaker talked about the issue of submissiveness, because very many people misinterpret the aspect or the issue of submissiveness from childhood. For instance, from the culture I come from, we are trained to be submissive to our husbands, and I'll put the word submissive in quotes because it is always misinterpreted. From childhood, girls are trained to just go and get married, produce or give kids, give birth to kids, and that is all, nothing more. No education, no anything. So that really hinders, and that really affects us in our community. And each time a girl child does not have access to education, they lose out on very many things, because number one, they'll have that kind of low self-esteem. Each time a woman or a girl child will have that kind of low self-esteem, there will not be anything, because what will you be if you can't even present your own self anywhere? When your husband comes home, you can't come out of the bedroom because you fear of what might happen, that kind of low self-esteem. And then insufficient access to sanitation facilities, poor medical care, and access to health information. There are very many things that we do not have access on as women in our community. And all these accumulate to what we call domestic violence, because the moment a woman gets to understand what her rights are, and then that it will be interpreted otherwise. The moment you get to know what the rights of a woman are, that will be interpreted as being, or you want to be on the same level as the men. And I thank Grace that she spoke about including men or involving men in whatever programs that we want to partake, because if you do away with the men, they will not get to learn all this. They will always continue misinterpreting the rights of women in a totally different way. And the moment we lose out on all these, I think that also accumulates to the girls that have gotten the chance to go back to school. They'll always drop out of school. They'll always drop out of school because of lack of all these that we're talking about. And when they drop out of school, they definitely go into early marriages and early births. And the moment they go into early marriages and early birth, the kids will go through what the mothers went through. So the chain continues. The chain continues from generation to generation. But I also thank God that we have this toolkit now that we'll have to learn a lot and know how to address some of these problems that are continuously, that have become a cancer in our communities. For instance, I'll give me as an example. I got married at a very tender age. I was 17 when I got married. And from my culture, when you're going to get married, what they will tell you is you go with your hands only to work. You do not go with your legs. You do not go with your eyes. You do not go with your ears, so that you do not listen to whatever they're going to talk about your husband, and you pretend not to see what your husband is doing, whether he's bringing in more women and bringing in more children that you've not given birth to, and you have to take care of them. So you pretend you do not see anything. The only thing you go with in your marriage is hands to work. I think that is what Grace talked about. And then we become slaves in our own marriages. And I thank God for programs that come into our communities, that it was from those programs that come to our communities that my eyes were opened, and I went back to school. I was a school dropout. I went back to school at the age of 28. I sat in a class of students who were supposed to be 16 years, but I sat in that class when I'm 28 years old. And from then I saw a change in my life. And I wished that every woman, every girl would get a chance that I got. That is how we started House of Esther, that we tell our stories, and the girls and women out there, and of course the men and the youth, get to know that always there is a solution to something, especially when you get involved in community trainings and programs that come into your communities. So most of the challenges, I think, have been tackled by the previous speakers, but the major ones, I think, that are affecting my community are the underrepresentation of women. Each time we are underrepresented, we miss out on almost everything. We miss out on education, we miss out on financial inclusion, we miss out on medical, we miss out on almost all the important aspects that make up someone's life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. That was very, very pertinent. And I think stories, you're right, telling our own stories is very powerful, and sharing that, and sharing it with others who are in a similar position, but also to challenge the sort of cultural heritage we've had, both men and women really, indoctrinated into a culture where patriarchy is superior, is prominent, and gender inequality is also accepted as the norm. So we are, there's so much excellent work going on across the globe, and we've heard some examples already. Akpezi asks in the chat, why do you think that the problem is refusing to go away and the incidents are actually increasing? Is that your view? I'll ask that question now to Abaru first, because to give her an opportunity to comment. Abaru, do you have any views on that? Abaru? No? Okay, I think she maybe can't hear us. Would another panelist like to answer that? Shall I pass back to Edith? Would you like to respond to that one, Edith? Despite all this great work that's going on.
I can respond to what I think makes the problem refuse to go away. I saw.
Oh, Grace. Okay. Yeah. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
I saw as I was growing up. I saw many organizations doing a lot of work in my community, and nothing was changing. And that made me be very, very curious. Why is this happening and nothing is changing, and there's so much work going on? Some of the changes refuse to happen when methodologies that are used don't resonate with the communities that you are working with. For example, if people came from abroad, America, Europe, and even Nairobi, and came to my community and started to combat anything, and they don't understand the culture there, they don't understand why people do what they do, then you have no entry point. And so a lot of money is spent, people do so much work, but at the end of the day, when the outside community has left, you just find that nothing really changed. They will spend the money, the people will enjoy that money, they will take teas and coffee and whatever, but at the end of the day, the community did not embrace them. So one of the things that I am trying to do in my community is to make sure that the community makes decisions, the community directs the process, the community identifies their priorities and works with us. We don't go to work for them. It doesn't work. They have to be the ones leading the process. And that's for me how change began. And that's where I'm seeing that there is now change that has begun. So the outsiders and the insiders have to work together in a way where the owners of the problem really see it as a problem. Because if they don't see it as a problem, it doesn't matter how much work you put in. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In
I think that's a
addition
very,
to, can
yeah,
I,
sure. Yeah, Edith, yeah.
in addition to what Grace has said, and I resonate with what she's saying is, I am big on education. So bringing education, whatever method, bringing education to the community, right? And involving the stakeholders, involving community members, having representatives. For example, if we are discussing an issue that affects women, why shouldn't women be on the table? If we're discussing issues that affect children, vulnerable children, why shouldn't we have advocates, people that will represent these children on the table? Like I said earlier on in my presentation, you can't solve my problem for me if you don't find out how I feel or what I think my problem is. You don't know what my problem is until you ask me, until you ask for my contribution, right? So education, bringing education into the community, changing the women's mindset, because it's one thing for us to say, okay, let's make men allies. Let's involve them. Let's involve all the stakeholders. What about the people that are particularly concerned, the people that the beneficiaries of whatever laws or whatever change we are bringing into the community? Have we changed their mindset? Alan talked to us about the information girls are given before they get married. We have to change such, information, change the perception, the way women think or see themselves. That in itself is a long way to solving this problem.
Thank you, Edith. And Martin has just agreed with you by saying that in the Netherlands, his experience, domestic violence victims often blame themselves for the domestic violence, and it's about changing their own perceptions too about themselves. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yes, another question here from Macpaisy. She thanks you both very much for that, and she asked, do you think a toolkit providing resources and how to do tools can help in the process of the community leading this process of change? Who would like to reply to that? Alan, would you like to have any comments on that, or Uzo maybe, or Edith? Put your hand up if you'd like to reply to that. How do you think this toolkit can benefit the community, which seems to me...
I want to defer to Abaru and Grace, since they work directly with communities.
Okay. Abaru's having trouble with her network connection, so I don't think she can get through at the moment.
One of the ways in which this toolkit can help our community. I come from a community, and actually the whole of Kenya, where we have small grassroots community organizations and faith-based organizations, but they don't have much skill. They don't have such tools. They don't have even knowledge on how to raise funding, and they are not so visible internationally, not even nationally. They're not so visible. So a tool like this, if it can get to these groups like my own and many others around me, they will greatly benefit by tapping into the skills which are emanating from the tools. I've not had a chance to read it yet, but I'm very, very positive about it. I see that this is one of the ways in which a community and an organization like mine can benefit, where, for example, if there are skills on how we can raise funds, skills on how we can partnerships with other neighboring communities, skills on how we can negotiate with those people who have the power in the leadership. Those are things that communities at the grassroots level don't have. So I see how these can be beneficial to a lot of organizations, faith-based organizations and community-based organizations, which don't have a national and an international outlook. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You want to add anything to that, Edith?
Yes, and I think these are the issues. These are some of the contents of our toolkit. Partnership. We have list of organizations, especially international organizations that communities can partner with. We have, like I said, role model. We have links to fundraising, for communities, how communities can negotiate. We also talk in our toolkit, we also talk about how communities can hold meetings, how they can set boundaries during these meetings, right? And how they can involve all the stakeholders, bring everybody to the table. We talk about how information can be disseminated. How does the community disseminate information prior to now? And then we can just say, okay, add this to whatever, method you disseminate information so that everybody has information about what is going on. How to get representation. When you are doing anything in the community, make sure that everybody is represented. The various groups that you have in the community is represented on the table when you're discussing it. The toolkit also talks about, areas that women can be empowered. And we had actually concentrated on 3 areas: education, giving women access to education. We talked about economic empowerment, allowing women to participate in, the building of the economy, in doing business, give women access to business loan. We also talked about health, giving women access to health, also giving them access to health education, because that is important, and they have to know their bodies. They have to know also the health implications for their families. If you want them to, play the role of a mother, a wife, a sister, a brother, a niece, and, whatever roles, we women play in the society.
Thank you very much. And sorry.
Can I add on something?
Could you put your hand up if you want to talk? Because I'm not sure who's wanting to talk at the moment. Is that Grace?
This is Alan.
Oh, Alan, right. Okay, Alan. Oh, I can't see you, so that's why I didn't know you wanted to talk. Yes, please talk, Alan. Yeah, please contribute.
To also add onto that, as I believe the toolkits can also help our communities. Someone talked about education, but how to fall back into the system. Because remember, the moment you go through what you've gone through, like domestic violence, anything that you've gone through, trafficking, and like the lady Grace talked about, the female genital mutilation, how do you into the community? So I believe if you can get the toolkit, will so much help us in this mentorship and guidance. For instance, addicts go to rehabilitation centers. If you can somehow rehabilitate the victims, and they get to know how to fall back, because falling back into the community also is not so easy because of the stigma we faced during whatever we went through. But also empowering. I so much believe in skills and skills development. Here in Uganda, we call it hands-on programs and projects. For like catering, like tailoring. If a woman can get a skill that will help them in the near future, maybe to after they've learned a skill, they can generate an income that will leave. This toolkit will also be useful in that way. Also, microfinance project. I think that Miss Edith talked about that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alan. I see that Abaru has raised her hand, but I'm not sure if she's able to link in yet. Yes. Abaru?
Yes, I'm here, Rose.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, basically, and for sure to base on the fact that these women are the most vulnerable, exposed to many causes of violence, such as they don't open up, hence need for safe spaces to open up to someone that they will really trust. It is very important that once we shall be talking to these women, there should be created a safe space where they can easily open up and their issues can be addressed. And also, if you see our world of today, men take power over women. There's a lot of power imbalances and gender inequality and abuse of human rights, where men are seen as more important than women. But again, they fail to cater for these women. So if really this, I really know that these toolkits can be of importance of importance to the community around. And once we address the issue of power imbalance and gender equality, these women will be seen as somebody in the community. Their rights will be respected as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shabaru. Thank you. I'm glad you managed to link in there. Well, you managed to contribute because you were having trouble with your web connection, weren't you? There's a request from Paisy and others to ask if we have time, Neil, to show for Grace to show her slides. Can I just ask Neil about that, because he's our technical person who's organising the technical side of this webinar.
Oh, that's fine. Yep, that's absolutely fine.
Would that be okay? Would you have to give Grace?
No, it's all set up to go.
It's all set up. Grace, would you like to have a couple of minutes just to share your slides? I think that would be very appreciated.
Okay, let me see if I can upload. I don't know.
Okay.
If this will work.
Yeah, you need to have them open at the bottom of your screen.
Okay, is that, I think that.
Oh, there we go. Yes, that's right. Yeah, we can see that.
How do I scroll this? I want to see if I can scroll to the, okay, this one is about who we are, what we do, how we engage with men. Are you seeing the slides? Because I'm not sure.
You need to put it into slide mode.
Oh, okay. Like
yep.
This.
That's the one. Yep, that's the one.
Is that okay?
That's better. Yeah.
Now
we only have a few minutes, Grace. So if you could do it, fairly quickly, that would be great. Thank you.
This is where we began, where we started coming together, and this was around 2014. Women wondering what we do. And here we started by meeting in our own houses, and we don't have very pretty houses, but that's how we started. We discussing first, and then we started merry-go-rounds, and we started coming together to make bricks, because we were asking ourselves, what is it that we can do which is within our reach? So because we have land that is near the rivers, we started making bricks. People need bricks for building their houses. So this started working. When you look at a woman like this, she was in very severe violence. And at this time, she was miserable. Every night she used to run out because of the way the husband used to beat her up. So we came in and started, her name is Joyce. We came in and started giving loans, the Kiva loans. And later on now we have our own fund where we give women loans and they're able to have their own economic activities. Here, when we realized women were not doing so well, even if they have the loans around don't change anything. So we started connecting them to experts so that they started learning how to do finance literacy, how to do savings, budgeting, organizing their money, beginning to have their own better businesses. And then from there, they started doing their crop farming and animal farming. So these are women that we were inviting from the local banks to come and teach them about finance literacy, and also inviting them, other experts from crop farming, animal farming, to come and train them. If you look at a cow like this, when they started, their cows were very, very thin and no milk, 1 cup of milk. But now when they started getting information from the experts, they were able to do better. Cows get more milk, they could sell their crops, and life started to improve. At the same time, we were training these women on how to be advocates. And we took a whole year training women and men on how to advocate and how to embrace the issues which are affecting their society, the women's rights, human rights. So you can see these women in yellow, they are beginning to do the work in their community. They go to schools, we bring them together and give them more knowledge. They embrace the issue, then they go out and do the work. I'm going quickly. We keep training more women. And then we started training men because we realized nothing will change if men are left out. So this is one of those forums where we are training men, and we train them in a very, very fun way. We do a lot of work on popular education, which is critical thinking, and we use a lot of exercises, lots of pillars, lots of brainstorming. And so they embrace the critical consciousness angle, and they start questioning things. Here we make them realize the privileges they have. So this is an exercise which brings them to discover that they are so privileged, and this privilege doesn't even help them. Here we bring women to talk about their own stories, survivor stories, what they have gone through. And the only people we have in that room, apart from the survivor, is the men, so that the women and men are able to really listen and see what women go through. Here we now, after training them and doing all the exercise, we commit them. They have to make commitments. We don't force them. They even decide we are going to do something about this. And here they now are at work. They will get the banners and what and go to the road and start campaigning. They will go to the schools, to the churches, and they start doing the work. And then now here, both men and women are actually now embracing the work and working together. But there are times when they work separately from the men working separately, women working separately. But there are occasions when we come together and teach, from the teachers to the churches to anybody that we can reach in our community. You can see a crowd of women who are getting empowered. Every one of these women, they have taken loans, they have been empowered, they know their rights, and they are advocating for more change in their own community. And Joyce is here again. But now look at Joyce. She's one of those women who is actually doing the work in the community. She's a speaker, from being downtrodden to being a speaker even within Nairobi environments. I have so much to share and I can never be able to finish within 2 minutes. So
well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Grace.
We believe in the ability to change lives. We believe that everybody has that potential for change. And that's our website.
Thank you very much. That's very inspiring, Grace. And you've really illustrated how education and awareness can support these endeavors, these projects, and how your organization has been sort of an alchemy, really, an alchemist to create and develop this empowerment. But obviously every individual has to empower themselves, because you can't be empowered from outside. So that example of that lady, was it Joyce with the cow who became a leading advocate and an activist? That was very powerful. And that's the kind of tools that the toolkit is seeking to encourage people to engage with. And I think when we get the resource finished, it'll be really a very impressive piece of work that will be shared widely. And I think what we'll ask you to do is to help us to do that sharing, because we've created under Edith's leadership and all of your contributions a fantastic resource. But how do we get it out there where it's going to be useful? So I think when we finally launch the actual toolkit, it'll be very useful to have your ideas, but also to ensure that we circulate it widely, and we ask you to share it, because it's going to be available free, a free resource for anyone to use and to apply in their own context and within their own cultures. Because I think that point about culture was a very crucial one as well. And this toolkit is not about one size fits all. It's about giving people ideas and resources and tools to adapt for their own particular situation. So I thank you all very much. We've come sadly to the end of our time, but I thank you all so much for a fantastically interesting and inspiring webinar. I'd just like to point out that next in the series is on the 12th of July at 4 p.m. UK British Standard Time. And that one is about climate action. And we'll be focusing on the work of the toolkit team for developing a toolkit on climate action. All these issues link together, and it's sometimes hard to separate them all, but I think underpinning so many of them is this issue of gender equality. And I think it's really crucial for our common humanity. And to tackle the huge global issues of climate and conflict, we need to address gender inequality, because if we don't have that, then we are losing a resource that is so important, half the population and more of the world. We need everybody's help and inspiration and ideas and contribution. So thank you very much, all of you, yet again. It's been a really excellent afternoon or morning, depending on where you are in the world. So hope to see you at the next webinar on the 12th of July. Thank you again. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.